And it isn't a rollout. It isn't a fanfare. It isn't this is like any orientation toward existing glim glam is a mistake.
That's right. Yeah, that's actually nice as even just heuristic. If you notice existing glim glam is pointed in your direction, something's going awry.
Yeah, head for the shadows.
Yeah, head for the shadows.
No matter what it is that has to happen at this point, it is not going to be possible unless there is a perception shift. There's the idea of creating models of projects and implementing them without perception shift.
That's how I got here.
Forget it.
Yeah, I agree. The thing that just popped into my mind, and it's interesting to sort of, so what would I say? So perception, and then something maybe like almost like disposition, or an intuitive sense.
There is an aesthetic.
Yeah,
shift.
an aesthetic.
Yeah.
I was reminded of how regenerative agriculture works. In some sense, that's what we're about. That's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good, almost maybe even a mapping. Agriculture is one of the earliest instantiations of the managerial mindset, and large chunks of civilization are adjunct to agriculture. And they're just glued on as a necessity, and glued on as a necessity, and glued on as a necessity, or unlocked as a new, adjacent possible in managerial space. But if I'm taking agriculture, I'm doing regeneration. What I notice is, first of all, it takes time.
Yeah.
It's gonna go down before it goes up. And in the down stage, in the beginning, it's weeds.
Right.
I don't have fruit anymore in my 10,000 acre monoculture orange grove that all the soil has been depleted. Like, that's just not going to happen. Right. I'm going to get weeds. If I get anything at all, I'm going to get weeds, and then I'm going to get pests. And so it's actually, it may look like a deeply downward trajectory. But again, actually biblical in nature. Yeah. 7 years of pestilence, and each year I see a little tiny glimmer of an emergence of the actual healthy ecosystem. But even more so, I still have another downward wave of some new piece that's coming in. And if I can understand that the new piece that's coming in is an intrinsic piece of the ecosystem regenerating, coming back into its selfness and building all the loamy, complex infrastructure that it needs to be to simply be an ecosystem, then I can sort of nod to it and say, and yes, we're moving forward. This is John Vervaeke and I had a conversation about grief, and I think these are very closely related. Grief is the underground work that's being done to actually heal something. It's the stitching back together again, and it's the energy that's stitching back together again underneath in the dark that has to happen.
And it is in the underground. Like this, we are talking about the underground.
Yeah.
In every sense of the word, in the sense of the soil, we're talking about it in the sense of the stuff that's dark that you can't see. We're talking about it in the sense of the kind of, like the Underground Railroad, the kind of, the whole rebellion of this is actually totally underground. And it isn't a rollout. It isn't a fanfare. It isn't this is like any orientation toward existing glim glam is a mistake.
That's right. Yeah. That's actually nice as even just heuristic. If you notice existing glim glam is pointed in your direction, something's going awry.
Yeah. Head for the shadows.
Yeah. Head for the shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's hard to do because you try to get funding and you try to get support and you try to get, enough like people interested. And in order to get them interested, you have to have some bandwidth. And then, there's like all this crap that you get involved in that is so utterly crappy. And if it becomes a meme, it's gone. There's nothing. It's gone. Start over.
It's gone. Yeah, start over.
Yeah.
That is my relationship with the thing formerly known as Game B.
Yeah, that thing.
I tried to give it a name. I tried to give it a name from this esoteric tradition that was
Yeah.
difficult to meme, but the power of memeing is strong.
Well, and there were a lot of people attracted to that space who were attracted to memeing. So it wasn't the game B, it was I think it was it's what was already in the soil there.
Yeah.
That's what was going to grow. If that's what is in the soil, that's what will grow no matter what seed you plant.
Yeah. And again, if I can look at it and say, hey, there was a weed, we went just, maybe you're going through the weed phase. No, actually, I think we're probably going through the rat phase right now, or the pest phase. That's good news. That means that the loam is beginning to build, and everybody who continues to grow in the context of their actual, that practice, the practice of listening to the music and beginning to become more and more sensitive and, okay, and confident, comfortable with, I can begin to play music that has something more than nothing in it. And that's how it happens. Yeah. I noticed that I'm a little bit, there's a fear. I have a fear of, and it's very related to that notion of collapse equals chaos.
Mm.
That people, and pretty much everybody outside of small areas of what used to be called the third world, are profoundly uncomfortable with lack of luxury. Let's put it that way. Like we've unfortunately gone to the other side of that. We went through a place where the presence of luxury was a wonderful thing, to the absence of luxury is a horrible thing. And the unwillingness to be able to step away from the presence of luxury, or more importantly, the unwillingness to step into the absence of luxury. And I don't mean even if you choose to do so, even if you consciously say that's virtuous and choose to do so, the deep embodied hesitancy and the inability to actually go there as we go into a global weed phase. I guess that's just what it's going to be.
Well, and for me, that's why the perception shift is so needed. So, what most, yeah, without the perception shift, that perception shift is a sort of inoculation against that type of violent chaos where we're against each other.
Yeah. Right? The thing that just came in when you said that, and I was like, it's funny, you said perception shift, and I found myself searching for, okay, how does that land in me? Was almost like a trade. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, well, I'll make you a trade. I will take materialist excess and superfluous luxury, and I will give you meaning. I will give you love. I'll give you beauty, and I'll give you the sacred. Is that a good trade? And there's almost like a small, like you can imagine, like a little barter at the edges, like a little bit. And I don't mean by the way that there's an expectation that one must live a mendicant monk lifestyle, but there's a big gap between enough and now 4 or 5 generations of run amok conspicuous consumption, for example.
Yeah.
And that's a perception shift that if you feel it, feels very wholesome. And then it's okay.
What I'm seeing is very, very similar to that. And I would describe it just a little bit differently, but it's the same thing. It's the perception that that all of these contexts, that all of these institutions, that you can't find the beginning and the end of these problems. Okay, so the first things that happen with people in this warm data space is they become hopeless. Because they look at it and they go, oh my God, how the hell are we supposed to solve these problems? And at first, I was really worried about that because I thought, well, you can't go around breeding hopelessness. And then I was like, well, actually, what the fuck? I've been waiting for this my whole life. Finally, these people are starting to get the enormity of what it is to actually talk about systemic change. People talk about it like you could, just do a couple things and then you'd have systems change. And that's ridiculous. And so finally people were getting how serious this thing actually is. And they were like, oh no, but then the next thing was, that they started to perceive a kind of, well, the project is called People Need People. They're starting to perceive that there isn't actually anything there, and that in order to do what they need to do, they have to build relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And in that relationship, here's the interesting thing: they have no idea who they are. No idea. So what starts to happen is there's this thing, this kind of, I call it finding a way, but there's this thing of, well, let's just figure this out. But if you just go to the let's just figure this out from a mechanistic engineering mindset, you just figure it out with a bunch of engineering solutions, right? But if there's that perception shift first, then the let's just figure it out becomes a really interesting exploration of who is Jordan in relationship to Nora.
Mm-hmm.
What thoughts do you think when you're in conversation with me? Who am I when I'm with you? Because it's not just who am I or what I'm capable of, right? This
Yep.
idea of collaboration is not an engineering question. It's not an engineering question. If it were an engineering question, we would ask, what's Jordan good at? What's Nora good at? What's Daniel good at? What's Phoebe good at? And we'd say, okay, together we can form this machine. But the thing is, we actually don't know what we're good at when we're together. We don't know. So that means that you're going to be thinking things you never thought before and being able to become in ways that you never could become before, because I am becoming with you in new ways. It's an ecology. It's not actually a machine.
Well, here's where things I think get pretty potent, because you've referenced the discovery of the presence of the relationship as real and maybe even in some sense more fundamental. And then there's the experience of there's an experience for me, an experience of an orientation towards like a form of a pivot. Just say, oh, what happens if I perceive what's happening as this one is acting as a particular vessel or vehicle for the expression of the relationship into the shared space.
Yeah.
So it's no longer Jordan is talking with Nora, but rather there's a relationship that takes time to emerge. There's always a dance in the beginning as we begin to discover and feel into the nature of what it is. But then there's a point where you can kind of relax into it and discover, oh, here's the aspect of this relationship that speaks most, speaks through this vehicle well, or speaks to this vehicle in a particular way. And it's funny, the phrase that popped into my head was the law of the included middle.
Mm-hmm.
The image of the machine is fundamentally, I would say, the image of logic, which is the image of the law of the excluded middle. Specifically taking the space between us and deleting it, and having an architecture that can try to operate with just these without the middle. When you include the middle back in, you're doing something quite different. And what you discover is that the middle is gigantic.
Yeah, it's gigantic. It's absolutely filled with possibility. And there, all that hopelessness is replaced. The hopelessness is there. You should be hopeless. If you're going to try to solve this issue piecemeal, forget it.
Trying to solve it analytically, I've actually calculated it out. The probability is zero. So
zero.
Hopelessness is an appropriate response.
Yeah. Right.
But there's good news. You don't have to do it that way. There's another way to do it.
Yeah.
Probability, by the way, epsilon zero, but not zero.